Hi, this is Ritik, your biology subject matter expert from memoneet, and in this video, we will be, knowing more about the neural control and coordination, how the neurons or our nervous system they play its major role in communication. It could be with cell-to-cell communication or with how organs, everything that being coordinated together, uh, playing its major role in a specific function. So how neurons act in coordinating this, message and all is what we are gonna concentrate in this chapter. So as you know, like the neurons, right? So there is a certain coordination and the process through which two or more organs they are interacted and they are making or they're playing a complementary or they're complementing the functions together like of one another. So that is how actually the neurons functions. And this, for example, if you're doing a physical activity, say like you are doing some exercise or running, so obviously what happens is when you start running, so you require more energy and you will see like heartbeat rate gradually increases, breathing increases, you start feeling thirsty, right? And sweat, everything comes. Your body temperature may also increase. So this everything happens together. And once you stop running, and after certain moment or some minutes, when you calm down, right? So ultimately your body temperature, heartbeat, then breathing rate, everything comes gradually towards normal. So how this is happening? How these all? Because breathing is a different one, right? Then heartbeat is different one. Correct. So, but still, these organs they are coordinating with each other. How this is happening? That is what we will be concentrating in this video session. Thus, the function of muscles, the lung, heart, blood vessels, your kidney, and other organs are all coordinated while they are performing a physical exercise. So when I'm talking about the neural system or the nervous system, we'll start from basic, from the lower organisms. Say like in our body, the nervous system or the neural system, and the another one which is actually called as the endocrine system. So they two jointly coordinate and integrate all the activities of the organs so that they function in a synchronized way or a synchronized fashion. And the neural system, it provides an organized network of point to point connection. Say, like if there is a cell and here there is a cell, so there has to be a point to point connection. So that is given by what? Neurons for a quick coordination. And where I'm talking about the endocrine system, so they provide a chemical integration, so that is through what? Through the hormones. So if you see in Hydra, it is composed of a network of neuron. Whereas if you take in higher organisms like in insects, so neural system has been better organized in insect where a brain is present along with the number of the ganglia as well as neural tissues. Compare the figure. So here you are not absorbing the brain and you are also not absorbing the points of the neural tissues, right? So, but you are able to see the nerve net here. Whereas in insect, now you are seeing a brain, then you are also seeing the ganglia, then you are actually seeing what? This neural tissues also. So there is a development of this nervous system. And coming to the human beings or animals, higher organisms, it is again very complex and in detail. So human nervous system consists of one is central nervous system, and the another one is PNS, which is peripheral neural system. Central nervous system consists of brain as well as the spinal cord. Okay. Whereas this peripheral nervous system is again consists of the afferent fibers and efferent fibers, or you can also say like somatic neural system and autonomic neural system. Okay. So what happens here is in the afferent fibers, so and efferent fibers, whatever the information that comes from the brain, through the spinal cord, it reaches to the other part of the cells. So from the cells, whatever the information that comes back to the brain is through the efferent fibers. Clear with it? So then again, this peripheral nervous system has been divided into the somatic and autonomic neural system or nervous system. In the somatic neural system, it relays impulse from the central nervous system to the skeleton muscles, while in the autonomic neural system, again it impulse same thing, it impulse that messages from the peripheral, that is from the other cells, and it gives back, that is transmit impulse from the central nervous system to the involuntary. In general, the somatic neural system relays impulse from the relays central nervous system to the skeleton muscles, while this autonomic neural system, it transmits the impulse from the central nervous system to the involuntary organs and smooth muscles of our body. Okay. Autonomic neural system is again further classified into sympathetic neural system and parasympathetic neural system. So coming to the structure of the neurons here, the cell body contains the structure of the neurons. So cell, actually the neurons consist of the cell body, then we have axon, and last we have a synaptic knob. So that is how it has been divided. So this cell body contains the cytoplasm, okay, with typical cell organelles. So it consists of cytoplasm, then typical cell organelles, and certain uh, granules, which is actually called as Nissls granules. Then the axon here you are actually seeing as a long fiber, and the distant end of which is actually a branched like structure, and it is coming to this part, which is actually called as axon part. So which is, you can see a tube like structure, and at the end of the axon part you will see a bulb like structure, which is actually called as the synaptic knob, which possess the synaptic vesicles containing a chemicals which are actually called as neurotransmitters. We're coming to the cell body. Here you are seeing some of the fibers like structure which are ready to receive this neurotransmitters, okay, or an impulse. They are actually called as dendrites. So where you will be seeing the synaptic knob near to the dendrites. So like this, the synaptic knob will be, okay. So this is how normally the synaptic knobs and dendrites look. So dendrites are something which gives out the impulse or the neurotransmitters, and dendrite is something which actually receives the neurotransmitters. Then this axon part transmit the nerve impulse away from the, that's what I'm saying here. So this away from the cell body to the synapse or to the neuromuscular junction. So, based on where the cell body has been located, so they have been differentiated into three types. One is unipolar, a single elongated process with the cell body located off the side. So they are called as unipolar, and two processing separated by the cell body. So here two are being separated by the one cell body. So it is in the middle of the processes. So it is called as bipolar neurons because it has two. and we have more than two processes, a single axon, and multiple dendrils are present. So here you're not seeing any dendrils around the cell body. Here also you're not seeing dendrils around the cell body. Rather, two processes are there, right? But here you will be seeing around the cell body many dendrils. So they are called as multipolar neurons. So coming to the cell body where you're talking about axon, there are two types of axon, namely myelinated and non-myelinated. So what do you mean by myelinated? So they are actually enclosed or enveloped with this Schwann cells. So wherever you're finding the Schwann cells presence, they are myelinated, which forms a myelin sheath around the axon. And wherever you're not finding this myelinate, what do you say that? Schwann cells, and there is no myelin sheath, so they are called as what? Non-myelinated nerve fibers. Clear? So there is a gap here that you can absorb between the two adjacent myelin sheath. They are actually called as nodes of runway. So here you have, so the myelinated nerve fibers are found in the spinal and cranial nerves. So unmyelinated nerve fibers is enclosed by the Schwann cells that does not form a myelin sheath around the axon and is commonly found in autonomous and somatic neural system. So then, how exactly this impulse is conducted? That is what makes a difference. So these ion channels are selectively permeable. So, for example, you have a cell body here, and we have an axon, and later we have, what do you say that? Synapse, right? So this is how a rough diagram, how it looks. So considering only this part, that is axon part, the ion channels are selectively permeable to different ions. So that means if this is the ion channel, okay, here you're actually seeing an ion channel here, and these ion channel are selectively permeable. That is what I need to understand here. Okay, so because they are what? Selectively permeable. I'll take some other color, maybe. Yeah. Ha. So they are selectively permeable here. So when a neuron, so this red color is an impulse. Okay. So when a neuron is not conducting any impulse, so what happens when there is no impulse in the neuron? It is actually in the resting state. Resting, the axon membrane is comparatively more permeable. So this is more permeable towards the potassium ion, okay, and nearly impermeable towards the sodium ion. That means it do not give, it is impermeable towards the sodium ion and permeable towards the potassium ion. So that is what happens. Now, similarly, the membrane is impermeable to the negative charges and proteins present in the exoplasm. That means it will not allow any negative charges, correct, to go out. Getting? So where it is not going to allow any positive charges to come in. So the axon inside the exoplasm, inside the axon contains, now it contains high concentration of K plus ions and more concentration of Na plus ions outside. So inside, negative charge ions or proteins will be there, and very low concentration of Na plus ions will be there. Outside, Na plus concentration will be more, and what? The positive, right? The concentration will also be more. That is higher concentration of Na plus ions, and this forms a concentration gradient now. So these ionic gradient across the resting membrane are maintained by an active transport of ions by a sodium. So that is actually called as sodium potassium pump, which transports this Na plus ion outside and K plus ion into the cell when an impulse has been produced. As a result, the outer surface of the axon membrane possesses what? A positive charge, while its inner surface will be having the negative charge, and it is a polarized condition. So the electric potential difference across the resting phase when no impulse has been produced, so that a plasma membrane, it is negligible and is called as resting potential. So now when a stimulation is applied at a site of a polarized membrane. So now here you can see a stimulation has been applied at a polarized membrane. Say like it is side A. So this leads to a rapid influence of Na plus ion, followed by the reversal of the polarity at this side. That is, the outer surface now becomes more negatively charged and the inner surface becomes more positively charged. Okay. So the polarity of the membrane at the side A is thus reversed, and hence it is actually called as depolarized condition. Now, the electric potential difference across the plasma membrane at the site A is actually called as action potential, which is the fact termed as that means now there is a nerve impulse happened. So at side immediately ahead, so what happens now? The impulse is being produced and that has to move now. So the membrane has what? Now the positive charge on the outer surface side to the where the impulse is not happened. So this places positive charges there outside the membrane and negative charge inside the surface. As a result, what happens? I told the current will flow from point A to point B. Correct. So from the side, so the current surface flows from side B or whatever it is. So hence the polarity of the site is reversible. So once this impulse is moved from point A to point B, so the polarity of point A will become again once again normal, like previous how it happened. So you will be seeing the changes in point B. Thus, the impulse gradient at site A reversed at the site B. The sequence is repeated along the length of the axon, and as consequently, the impulse is conducted. The rise in the stimulus induced permeability to Na plus is extremely short lived. It is quickly forwarded by the rise in permeability to K plus. So within a fraction of seconds, this K plus diffuses outside the membrane and restores the resting potential of the membrane at the site of excitation or where exactly this happens, and the fiber becomes once more responsive, okay, to further stimulation. So this is how actually the stimulation happens. So once it reaches to the synaptic what do you say that where cleft, or where exactly this synapses is present. So now that chemical has to, that is neurotransmitters has to release, right? So the nerve impulse is transmitted from one neurons to the another through the junction, which is actually called as synapses. And this synapse is formed by the membranous of the presynaptic neuron and the postsynaptic neurons, which may or may not be separated by a gap, which is actually called as synaptic cleft, which is a microscopic gap, a very minute microscopic gap between the the synapse as well as the dendrite, something like that. So there are two types of synapse. One is electrical synapse and the chemical synapse. So the cleft that you were seeing was actually an electrical synapse, and what will be the released is a chemical synapse. The membranes of pre and post synaptic neurons are in very close proximity. So electric current can flow directly from one neuron into the other across these synapses. So transmission of an impulse across an electric synapse is very similar to the impulse conducted along a single axon. So impulse transmission occurs or across an electric synapse is always faster when compared to the chemical synapse. But the electrical synapse is very rare in our system. Chemical synapse is what normally we do see. Correct. So the chemical, uh, synapse, the membranes of the pre and post synaptic neurons are separated by a fluid filled space, which is called as the synaptic cleft. So this part is actually called as synaptic cleft. And the presynaptic neurons, an impulse when an action potential is there across the synaptic cleft. To this is actually called as postsynaptic neurons. Chemicals which are actually called as this neurotransmitters, synaptic vesicles, you will be seeing this neurotransmitters. So they will be released here and impulses at the synapse. Then the axon terminates containing the vesicle filled with this neurotransmitters. Correct. So when an impulse arrives at the axon terminal, so if this is an impulse and it arrives at an axon terminal, so when they fuse with the plasma membrane and then they release these neurotransmitters in the synaptic cleft. So these synaptic neurotransmitters will go and they will be bind to the specific receptors on the postsynaptic membrane. This binding opens an ion channel allowing the entry of ions which can generate a new potential in the postsynaptic neurons. Okay. And the new potential developed may be either extremely or they could also be inhibitory. So, coming to the central nervous system, which is our brain, the human brain is well protected by skull. Inside the skull, the brain is covered by the cranial membrane consisting of an outer layer which is called as dura mater, a very thin middle layer which is actually called as uh, arachidon, and an inner layer which is in contact with the brain tissue which is called as pia mater. So the brain can be divided into the forebrain, then we have the midbrain, and the last we have is hindbrain. So coming to the forebrain consists of the cerebra, then it also consists of what? Uh, Thalamus and hypothalamus. Cerebra forms a major part of the human brain. Deep cleft divides the cerebrum longitudinally into two halves, which are termed as the left as well as the right hemisphere, cerebral hemisphere. And this hemisphere are connected by a track of nerve fibers that are called as corpus callosum, and the layer of cell which covers the cerebral hemisphere is actually called as cerebral cortex and is thrown into prominent folds. The cerebral cortex is referred to as the gray matter due to its grayish appearance, and the neuron cell bodies are concentrated here, giving the color to it. Then the cerebral cortex contains what? Motor areas, then it has a sensory areas and a large region that are neither clearly sensory or motor in function. These regions are called as the association areas and are responsible for the complex function like sensory association, memory, as well as the communication. So fibers of the tracks are covered with the myelin sheath, which constitutes the inner part of the cerebral hemisphere. So they give an opaque white appearance to the layer and hence is called as white matter. So the cerebrum wraps around a structure which is actually called as thalamus. which is a major coordinating center for sensory and motor signaling. Another very important part of the brain, which is actually called as hypothalamus, lies at the basal of the thalamus. And this hypothalamus contains a number of centers which controls the body temperature, urge for eating and drinking. It also contains several groups of neurosecretory cells which secrete hormones called hypothalamic hormones. An inner part of the cerebral hemisphere and a group of associated deep structure like amygdala and the hippocampus and many other things, which actually forms a complex structure which is called as limbic lobe or the limbic system. Along with this hypothalamus, it is involved in the regulation of the sexual behavior, expression of emotional reactions such as excitement, pleasure, rage, and fear, as well as the motivation. So, coming to the middle brain, which is located between the thalamus and hypothalamus of the forebrain and pons of the hindbrain. Pons region is here, okay, and the canal called cerebral uh, aqueduct, which actually passes through the mid brain. And the dorsal portion of the midbrain consists mainly of four rounded swelling lobes, which are called as what? Corpus quadrigemens. So coming to the last part, that is the hindbrain, as hindbrain comprises one of the thing which is actually called as the pons. Then we have cerebrum and medulla. So it is also called as medulla oblongata. So pons consist of the fiber tracts that interconnect different region of the brain. Then the cerebrum has very convoluted surface in order to provide the additional space for many more neurons. Then the medulla, of the brain is connected to the spinal cord, and the medulla contains centers which control the respiration, cardiovascular reflex, and gastric secretion. Three major regions make up the brain stem: midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Brain stem forms the this is the brain stem, so it actually forms the connection between the brain as well as the spinal cord. So this is all about the neurons and its coordination. So in case if you have any doubt, you're free to contact me through the message comment section or to the telegram channel. I would really definitely I would like to help you out. And very important thing is you are preparing for your NEET exam. So here is a golden opportunity where you will be mentored. So through the memoneet, our team will be mentoring you individually regarding your study planner and regarding how to cover up the syllabus and all. So for that also you can contact to the Telegram channel link. That is the memoneet. Yeah, this is it. So all the best and keep preparing and do follow, subscribe, like, comment, and also share with your friends. Thank you.